Simon, are you going to say welcome or welcome to? I'm going to say it because I'm obsessed with the
please
numbers.
carry on.
Welcome to what will become the fabled episode 19 of the Impact Narrative. And should we say the date? We should, shouldn't we? We say
the date is
the 15th
of June.
Yeah, 2018. That's just in case people watching it think that we predict certain things and they've already actually happened. So I predict, for example, that Donald Trump will become President of the United States, although Hillary looks to be, home and hosed, as the racing expression is. I think Mr. Trump might surprise us yet.
I predict that he will come up with an apparent nuclear agreement with North Korea.
It's funny. No, that's Iran you're thinking about. He'll make an agreement with Iran. I know President Obama is currently working on one, but anyway. But enough of this. Well, tomfoolery. You seem to be holding in your hand, Simon, a round object, which is
I have been presented with a spherical object.
Well, it's about time.
Indeed, I'm going to put it on my wall.
And well, that's good. So, which part of the globe are we? No. Anyway, so why have you got this? Could you tell our audience, because they may be wondering.
Well, this is day 2 of the World Cup.
Is it really?
It is.
Are you sure it's not day 19 of the World Cup, and we're making predictions which, like England's 6-2 defeat by Tunisia, will already be old news by the time.
It will. But no, this is.
I like this new Jeff Hurst person that they brought in for Jimmy Greaves. I think that he might.
He's got some potential.
He's got gunpowder in them boots.
But I hear he's also got German roots.
Oh no. Oh well, but never mind. We can, but if he delivers the goods, if we do get through our group stages in this World Cup, which England is hosting, it's just a very proud moment for us.
Indeed.
I just hope Kenneth Wolstenholme does a commentary. Because I think he's got a good turn of phrase.
I agree, yeah. I mean,
they think it's all over.
Time and,
well, timeless.
Finality and,
They think it's all over. It was 52 years ago. That's our new catchphrase.
That's fast maths, Mark.
Anyway, this is a surreal beginning to what will be, I think, a momentous... I feel good about this instalment.
Likewise.
Because we haven't hyped it.
We have the World Cup.
Yeah, we haven't given any... The media isn't kind of heaping expectations on us for this one, for this episode. And I think, we've played quite a cool hand, and we're quite young and whatever. We may do well in further instalments, and it's bad for us to be broken on the wheel of media expectation.
Indeed.
So, what's been happening this week, Simon?
So this week is quite an exciting week, Mark. Actually,
right.
I've been very positive about football. I'm using this World Cup as an opportunity to reflect on all that is good about the world, trying to look beyond the fact that the World Cup is taking place in Russia.
Yes, I think that's where
Tatchell has already been arrested.
Well, that's part of the course.
That there've already been protests and all kinds of things. But I'm looking at this as an opportunity to see 32 nations of the world coming together in a festival of fun.
Violence.
And yeah.
Well, it started well last night. Sorry, because did you see the Crown Prince and Putin?
I did. There was a wonderful handshake. It was sort of like this, and then Gianni Infantino was somewhere in the middle of it. It
was great because at the beginning it was like sort of, we're two good teams or whatever, you're winning and congratulations to you, and Putin looked sort of, it's all about the game sort of. But when the 5th goal went in, it looked like they were finding it difficult to pull the suitable faces. Mr. Putin actually looked embarrassed. I don't know, I mean, it's just a brief shot, but it looked like he was thinking, oh no, please don't score anymore. But of course he was thinking, once I'm away from the Crown Prince, I can then say it was all my achievement. But just the, his interactions with the Crown Prince became, I think, very awkward because it was such a humiliation.
Indeed. Trouncing. Well, what's interesting is that these are two states that were long-standing rivals, and this is what I love about the World Cup. You get this geopolitical coming together of states that either have no real history with one another, or you find out that the son of the ruler once dated
Vladimir Putin.
Exactly. But
I think that's just an idle rumour which I've started, and it's not true.
Not true.
Fake news.
Hashtag fake news. But in this case, you've got Russia and Saudi Arabia, who are two long-standing rivals, thrown together. at a point where they were actually starting to come together economically and politically.
So do you think maybe the draw was fixed? Is that what you're alleging?
Ooh.
That cements a burgeoning alliance.
Well, it does. I mean, there's deeper economic cooperation. It's still very small. Deeper military cooperation. Let's talk about developing energy cooperation. I mean, the two have signed a gas deal recently.
Right.
An oil deal recently.
Same difference.
Well,
Depends. For our American audience, ever growing, then it's the same thing, isn't it? Really? Well, petrol, whatever. Yeah. Anyway.
But the two have obviously had this long-standing rivalry over what's happened in Syria, with the Russians supporting Bashar al-Assad, the Saudis supporting opposition groups. So yeah, it was an interesting opportunity, an interesting coming together of these two long-standing rivals. But if you go all the way back to the years prior to the formation of the Saudi state, it was the Soviet Union that was one of the first to acknowledge Ibn Saud as the king of Hijaz and the Sultan of the Najd. So
They've got history.
they do. Thwarted by Mr. Joseph Stalin, who once assassinated the Russian ambassador to Saudi Arabia, who was a close personal friend of the king.
Right.
And from there it was
Naughty.
downhill.
Yeah.
King Faisal of Saudi Arabia said, "We will open an embassy in the Soviet Union once they find God."
Oh, barbed.
Indeed, indeed.
Well, Mr. Putin's found him. Well, at least he has for public consumption. I'm saying a lot of things which are very undiplomatic here. Yeah. But no,
If
he's
we
a
don't
man.
see you again, Mark. Just
He's
be
a
careful of your
sincere.
teeth.
He's a person for whom, if he was a stick of rock and he snapped him in the middle, then the word sincerity would be written there.
For younger viewers who may not know what rock is.
In paper scissors, it's the alternative thing.
Right.
Good. Well, anyway, so
I don't
you're
know,
enjoying it. Where are we?
Is rock still a thing? I mean, I remember when people would
yeah.
go away and they'd go on holiday while we're in school. They'd bring a stick of rock back. A teacher would hit it with a hammer and.
Well, those are good. Those hit the people who brought it back with the stick of rock.
There was one chap, but we won't go into that.
No,
right now.
exactly.
So yeah, it's exciting geopolitically. The World Cup has started. The opening ceremony was yesterday. Very, very odd. Did you see that, Mark?
I'm afraid I didn't, but I heard that Robert Williams, Esquire, was
Indeed.
good.
A well-known philosopher from the University of Leeds was performing.
Wow, not somebody who used to work here.
No, Robert
right.
Williams.
Oh right, okay.
Or Robbie, in fact.
Oh, but there are too many people called
Robbie
Robert
Williams.
or Robbie Williams.
He is a philosopher at Leeds, but actually no, the artist formerly involved with Take That
Yeah,
was
that's
performing.
They didn't make the mistake Churchill did in the Second World War, allegedly. Well, at least the mistake his friend Entourage did when he said, "Get me that man Berlin," and he meant Isaiah Berlin. But then some days later, dishevelled and bewildered-looking Irving Berlin was, and I nearly made the same mistake myself.
Nearly did, yeah.
Was ushered into his presence, and being called Robbie Williams or Robert Williams could lead to all sorts of, inappropriate people being booked. Because at my university at Durham, there was a political scientist, a study of American corruption, no less, called Robert Williams.
Well,
they're everywhere.
What's interesting is that that Robbie Williams, the artist, not the philosopher or the political scientist, is
or the comedian.
he was performing yesterday, straight out of 2001.
It was Robin Williams.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Anyways,
And,
I'm interrupting a lot.
Well,
this week.
it was alleged that he has he's been taking a lot of money from the Russians, from the oligarchs, to go and perform at teenage birthday parties.
Yeah, well, what's wrong with that?
Well, it seems very odd that a teenage girl in 2018
Would like
want
Robbie Williams. Well, I think he's got a timeless quality.
Morrissey-like chap.
Yeah.
Very, very odd.
No, he's got a timeless quality. I mean,
Right.
through it all, he offers me something, a
Lot
level
of love
of an affection.
Affection, right.
Whether he's right or wrong to
well-
accept this money, and through the waterfall, I think the money fall, the cascade of money,
Well, certainly a cascade
wherever
of money.
it may take him, but I hope that he enjoys it, whatever the rhyme is.
Apparently, just before ITV cut to back to the studio, apparently Robbie gave a bit of a political symbol. He stuck the finger up into the camera as if to say, well, I'm not being paid for this, I'm not taking Putin's money.
Is that what stick your finger up means?
Well, apparently, so...
So next time somebody in a car does that to me because I've driven very badly, it means I haven't been paid for this.
Or you haven't taken Putin's money.
So he's got, yeah, that's a kind of cred rebuilding gesture then.
Well,
having destroyed his cred by singing at that event, he then rebuilds it with a simple gesture. That shows that this is a man for the ages. If a man can do that, trash himself and then put himself back on a pedestal just by raising a finger, just like your cred after spilling your tea without any distractions at all, just the tea spillage.
Well,
I mean, you're going to have to stick a lot of fingers up to get yourself back after that. There you go. Woof.
Sorted.
Yeah. So you haven't lost it, Simon.
Oh, thank you.
I'm
Mark.
still there.
You.
You weren't paid for doing that.
I certainly wasn't, and neither are we.
No, we have to make that clear.
Yes,
but especially to all our sponsors.
Indeed. Anyway, so today is the second day of the World Cup. There's some interesting games. Mohamed Salah's Egypt taking to the field, and that's interesting. Mohamed Salah has managed to unite the Egyptian population, more popular than President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi.
Wow, that's doing some, and he's united them also in hatred against this Ramos person.
Well, for obvious reasons.
Yeah, that was terrible. As a surrogate Liverpool supporter.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
It was very, very, but Spain is obviously the other big political story. You're aware of this, Mark? I take it.
Well, what? But is it political or football? They sacked the manager because he's
taken another job at
and
the
they're
end
playing
of this
Portugal,
job.
which is a kind of Iberian Peninsula derby.
Indeed.
It's the Iberian derby. Has anyone used that phrase?
I would imagine so.
Right.
But yes. So yeah, interesting times. There's
Yeah.
a lot of little gems going to be taking place. The big game that I was hoping for between the Saudis and the Iranians probably isn't going to happen.
Yeah, that could have been
tasty.
difficult to officiate at that one.
I mean, the quality would have been shocking.
No, I thought the Saudis brought a certain je ne sais quoi.
Well, that's what their style was.
Yeah, it was very strange, wasn't it? Because the Russians all looked rather slow to me, but yeah. Anyway, go on.
I wrote a piece for the Conversation about this, and the headline that was proposed was Saudi Arabia and Russia are better at geopolitics than football, which is obviously true. But in this case, Saudi Arabia and Russia are better at geopolitics than football, but Russia is better than Saudi Arabia at football. So, yeah, lots of things to look out for.
That would have been a long headline.
Oh, it would, but very catchy.
Yeah.
I think. So that was the tweet that I put up this morning, just to say, one last read.
Right. Go for it.
Interesting times, I think, and the other thing to watch out for is obviously the broader social dynamics in Russia. We know that Russia is a largely repressive state in terms of human rights, in terms of political space. Oh, sorry, state secrets.
There are those who say that those who allege that Russia is...
Those such as the Freedom House and other well-regarded international organisations. There's something to look out for.
Mr. Corbyn seems to think highly of them.
Well, if he does, then
they're okay.
Who are we to disagree?
Oh, certainly not.
And
I
Mark,
wouldn't want to.
That's a wonderful segue into British politics.
It is.
Seamless.
Thank you. Yeah, we haven't predicted. What about the Tunisians? Come on, Simon.
Okay.
Predict.
2-0.
Predict away. 2-0 to Tunisia.
To England.
Okay. Yeah.
Relatively
the thing is,
confident.
you see, I think that what's happened is that the lack of hype has been so obvious. It's almost as if we are now hyping the lack of hype. So people are always saying, "Oh, this is going to be different this year because there's far less expectation on them."
So it's meta-hype.
Yeah, well, you see what's happening there is that there's the subtext or whatever.
Yep.
Is that there's an expectation that we will exceed expectations.
Yes.
And so it'll be exactly the same. You know, Southgate at the moment is, as we speak, is being applauded for his stewardship of the team, and the headlines.
2 weeks' time, he will have a Swede for a head.
Well, it depends who beat Swede, sugar beet, us. No.
Is there a Pythagorean rule as to avoid eating beets?
But there could easily be some puns. Tunisia has got so many, name that Tunisia or something. Or Southgate hums the wrong Tune.
Isia. Right.
It's waiting to happen, isn't it?
Taxi.
So Brexit.
Taxi.
Yeah. So Brexit. Yeah.
Brexit, yes.
Well, again, that's a developing story, isn't it?
Well, it is. So why
So
don't
we
we
can't
take it
talk
back a
about
couple
it.
of days then?
Okay.
So there's been a lot of events going on. First in the Lords, then in the
That
Commons.
wasn't. Yeah, that was more than a couple of days. But yeah, what's happening in the Commons is the House of Lords' amendments to the legislation,
Yeah.
which basically converts all EU legislation into UK law, and makes it and cleanses it of any European bureaucratic stuff. That's the legislation that's being discussed, and the House of Commons has rejected all of the Lords' amendments. However, one of those amendments about the what happens if a deal is, not to the liking. Anyway, whatever. It seems that Theresa May had a conversation with Tory Remainers in which she promised that there would be some compromise on this issue, as long as they. So what she'd done is she'd done the math and seen that there was a chance the government was going to lose, so she had to buy off the rebels, and now it seems to be pretty clear that the conversation was remembered differently by different participants in the conversation.
So in this case, who are the rebels, Mark?
Well, Dominic Grieve, Anna Soubry, Ken Clarke,
Right. Okay. And
who's
these
just
are
now. He's just because he wasn't going to stand in this last election, and so he has a license to rebel. Which he's used a lot in the past anyway, but he's just going to rebel on absolutely everything from now on, unless it's absolutely to his taste. But Anna Soubry, I mean, she again has made so many enemies. There's no, but it's Dominic Grieve, I think, people like that are, and Nicky Morgan. Those are people who have tried to play. They're not the shock troops of Remain. They're the kind of we're willing to hear reason troops of Remain. And he has come out this morning and kind of said they've been double-crossed in so many words.
Right.
So I
By
think
Mrs. May.
Yeah.
So what was the alleged deal that was made?
Well, the alleged deal was that there would be a compromise on long story short, on Parliament's say, the extent to which Parliament would be able, in a way, to prevent a deal which was not satisfactory to the House. In other words, what the rebels are trying to do is reassert the sovereignty of Parliament,
Right. Yep.
and to say that there has to be some accountability of ministers if they don't bring back a deal which is remotely similar to the one which has been kind of promised, whatever. So, yeah. And it seems that guarantees were suggested in the meeting with the rebels, and those guarantees have melted away somewhat.
Right. So what does that tell you about Mrs. May's confidence in her negotiating team?
Well, what she's doing is living from one crisis to the next, and so she's got an impossible. But we know she's got an impossible situation. So the way through it is to deceive the side which is causing you the most trouble, and then move on to the next crisis where you deceive the other side. And that seems to be, what else can you do? Because you just resign and the government, there has to be another general election, I think, because, you can't see in these particular circumstances, you can't see a replacement who can possibly keep this show on the road. And the arithmetic is such that the Remain camp, if they are suitably agitated and rebel with all the consequences that is going to have for them, that basically the government, even with its DUP annex, can't survive.
So, I'm thinking then, Mark, does that mean that Mrs. May is a political genius? In the sense that she survived for 2 years when many gave her weeks, days, hours. She was on life support on a number of occasions in the past 2 years. And yet she's still able to go from crisis to crisis and survive.
Yeah, but it is entirely because the people who in other circumstances would have brought her down straight after the general election. There's no doubt at all. If you say, I'm calling this general election because I want to increase my majority, and you lose your majority completely, and you are the centrepiece of the campaign, that is the end of your premiership.
Sure.
Unless other people decide it shouldn't be the end of you. So again, you say she's a genius. I'm afraid that even somebody like, I was going to say, let's think of somebody who's not particularly politically astute. that person.
Right. Yes.
Donald Trump, Boris Johnson, anyone, a mannequin, you know, a tub of lard could survive.
A tub of lard. Wow.
A talking tub of
That
lard.
had a,
It would have to say so. Well, no, it was a reference to Have I Got News for
It
You?
was
in the-
indeed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Political nod to times gone by.
Yes, indeed. So, yeah. So, I mean, it's a bit like the thing which you failed to mention, because I think it was only last week we were talking about the summit in North Korea.
Indeed.
And you were saying how worried you were and all this kind of thing, and oh dear, it's all gone wrong. And I said, no, of course it won't go wrong. Was this last week or the week before? That everything will be sorted, and the only thing that's worrying is a possibility that they do meet and it all goes horribly pear-shaped.
And instead.
Well, instead it was a bromance.
And there are all these wonderful captions of two men shaking hands saying, "It's wonderful to meet such a like-minded individual."
Indeed, yeah. Well, that was always on the cards, wasn't it? It's all there's kind of a tiff beforehand, Little Rocket Boy or whatever, and Fire and Brimstone. Was it Fire and Fury?
Indeed, yeah.
No, that's all the preamble to, you know, they had eyed each other up and thought, I like the cut of his jib or whatever. And yeah, I think, yeah.
Sure.
Anyway, so my
back to-
optimism was proved correct there.
Yeah, it was, and I'm reassured. My natural pessimism has been.
Assuaged. Anyway, so where were we?
So
that's the Brexit thing. I mean, again, it's what's today's crisis?
Yeah.
And the rules of politics in Britain have been suspended. I mean, in the end, it is this thing that everyone now is saying, kicking the can down the road. But in the end, the road ends politically at a cliff.
So
economically, it might not. What we now know is whatever Brexit does economically, and it is already having obviously bad effects, but that's still in dispute.
When does
Politically,
the road end then, Mark?
well, it should end, I guess, in March when we officially leave the. I mean,
But
it should. Well, what they're doing is trying, in the end, to delay the end of the road until the time of the next general election, when they hope that maybe some miracle will happen by then, and that the general election will be tantamount to another referendum.
Yep.
Yeah. So you can see how people who actually are quite sensible are thinking this as well. That a second referendum is going to be messy for lots of reasons. There'll be horrible controversy over whether it should be held in the first place. Whereas last time, the holding of the referendum, everyone agreed to it. Whether they agreed really or not, they just said, "Oh yeah, let's have a referendum." This time there'll be a massive fight over whether we should have a referendum. So have a general election instead. And and then you say Parliament decides. You say this general election has really been a referendum on Brexit.
Yeah.
If Parliament happens to be similar to what it is now, then that's the end of Brexit. If it hasn't come to...
Sure.
Because, of course, if given a
even
free
getting to
vote,
that
there'll be a
point-
crushing majority for Remain.
Even getting to that point, there has to be all kinds of wranglings and dispute to get Parliament to have that say.
Well, but this is the thing. They're hoping that what the rebels will have been told is that what we'll do is throw out the Lord's Amendment, because it doesn't really matter at this stage, that there'll be subsequent stages when we can ensure that Parliament gets a really meaningful say in all this. That's what will have been said at the meeting with the rebels. But of course the Brexiteers will have then burst into Theresa's study or cave or whatever and said, well, we've now snubbed the House of Lords, that's the end of it. That means that it's now basically the executive is going to keep control of this game. And so Theresa has had to say, I mean, this is all wild speculation of the kind I like, but Theresa's had to say there isn't really a concrete deal, there is no guarantee that Parliament will have a final say. And so the remaining, but in the end Parliament has to have a say. You just cannot, because it's Parliament which preserves the status of the executive. Sure. And so what they could just do, if it came to it and the executive was steamrolling everything, they would just have a vote of confidence and she would lose. Because the Tory Remainers would at that point put themselves in a corral or whatever, and they would say, right, this is probably the end of our careers, but it's a cause worth going to the stake over. There will come a point where all the Tory, I mean, we had a resignation of a junior minister the other day, we've had Labour people resigning, which is nothing new. This is, in the end, although people think why should anyone lose their careers over the European Union? Lots of people have lost their careers over the European Union, and these people are enough exercised by not only the future, but the other thing, these are people generally whose constituents did vote Remain. And so they're going to lose in a general election anyway. Their only hope of actually surviving all this chaos is by, this is bizarre, but doing what their conscience or their rationality tells them to do.
Conscience in
That's
politics?
that's when prime ministers are really up against it, when you know that there's enough people in the parliament who actually genuinely want a course of action which is inconvenient to you. Genuinely, they're not being told by the whips to do it. They can't be told by, in the end they can't, because they do have consciences. Or at least they don't want to vote for something irrevocably which will damage Britain, in their view.
In their view, right.
Anyway, so that's that.
So, okay.
Nothing's happened in the Middle East.
No. Well, many things. But not that we have time for now, Mark. We are running out of time once again. We are indeed. So,
No, we're not. No. Prediction. 2-0. 2-0 to...
Yes.
We've done that.
We've done
Times?
Tide times. The tide is turning.
Right.
But we have Book of the Week time.
Okay.
We have time for Book of the Week, Mark. I have 2 suggestions.
Yeah, I know what they're going to be.
Do you? Right.
Philip Kerr. Listen to that name. Is an obscure person who writes a book every 6 minutes about Hitler.
I met someone else who was a big fan of Philip Kerr the other day.
Really? And were his or her attendants there to usher them back to their cell?
Yes,
Right.
they were. But what have you been reading at present, Mark?
What have I been reading? I've just finished reading a biography of Henry VI, which I bought from our favourite charity shop.
Excellent.
And it's a bit turgid.
Oh.
No, it wasn't that good. What was the other thing I was starting to do? Against All Enemies.
Oh,
by
Richard A. Clarke?
Yeah.
And no. I was put off quite quickly in that book where he talks about 9/11 happening and he immediately reached for his gun and he ran around the White House. And
shrieking. Yeah, I've just read that bit and that isn't quite what he says, but it's a kind of a... You know, there's backstories all the time. I looked to my left and there was so-and-so who I appointed to the Food and Drink Lard Inspection Agency 20 years ago or something. A resourceful and mild-mannered... Oh, no.
So that is not Book of the Week.
Well, it could be anti-Book of the Week. I mean, I'm sure there's lots of interesting stuff in it, but I just don't like the way it's done. It's a bit like the kind of, I don't know, fictionalisation of real things that happened, like, I don't know, during the time of the Third Reich, and that kind of thing doesn't appeal.
Fair enough.
And I don't know how it can to anyone. Anyone!
Right, okay.
Philip, are you watching?
Well,
stop writing those books!
He died last week.
Oh, no, he did. He didn't!
Last month.
We should have done a special show.
We should. You're feeling bad now, aren't you?
I am. I mean, never has more superfluous advice been offered. Stop writing those books.
Top of the faux pas league.
Well, no.
Dr. M. Garnett.
No, it's just I'm a month behind the times.
No,
but we could pretend that this episode was shot a month ago. In which case,
your comments were very prescient, and our foresight was.
Yeah. Well, in horribly bad taste.
Well, yes.
But the audience doesn't know that I might have actually read his obituary, which was all about, mild-mannered Philip Kerr strode into the office of the Vice-Führer for something, barking orders in guttural Brussels bureaucratese. He said, "Stop writing Zola's books!"
You should jot that down, actually. Yeah.
That's the opening
excellent.
paragraph.
Well, no, my Book of the Week, I have 2 suggestions. I'll let you pick. One is fiction, one is non-fiction. So I know which one you're going to pick.
Right, the fiction one is your latest book on Saudi Arabia.
The fiction one is a book by an author called Amir Mukherjee.
Right.
And it's set in the final throes of
the
Third
British
Empire.
A different Reich.
Calcutta. Very interesting.
And how have you got time to read this, along with the late lamented Phil?
Bus journeys.
You take long bus. I see a long bus journey ahead of you.
The U3 is.
Well, now you should go on the U2, and you would never get there.
Well, that's true.
And I still haven't
found
where the bus station is.
Excellent. So that was one of the books.
That's for people who don't. Anyone who doesn't know Lancaster, the U2 is a bus that goes round and round and round.
Round the houses.
Yeah. And the other one.
And skirts the motorway, in fact. But no, the other book is a book...
Skirtle's going to play for Newcastle, you know, there's a rumour. Anyway, go on.
How ye?
Yeah, yeah.
The other book is a book by a chap called Bruce Rydell, who was he's a political figure. He served a number of US administrations, and he's written a book called Kings and Presidents.
Right.
And it's a book about the US relationship with Saudi Arabia.
Oh, yes, I think you mentioned that. Yeah, and the first paragraph is, I looked to my left, and there was the mild-mannered yet resourceful hamburger.
It's not far off.
Called hamburger.
But no, it's an interesting book. It's filled with little nuggets, little anecdotes. My favourite two. One is in reference to the Monica Lewinsky affair. At which point, I think it was then Crown Prince Abdullah.
No, it wasn't.
Referred to it as a. Right. Yes, as a Jewish conspiracy.
Oh.
Sorry, a Zionist conspiracy.
Right, right.
And then the publication of a book by the Elders of Zion, which is a well-known piece of Soviet, Russian propaganda.
Yes, I think I might have heard of that one.
Yeah, fictional. That was being distributed across the kingdom as fact.
Right.
With a nod to Umberto Eco's The Prague Cemetery, which made me laugh.
Yeah, well, that's the kind of thing that happened a lot in the Third Reich, though, wasn't it? That the Elders of Zion stuff was distributed as fact. So it's history repeating itself.
Indeed. Who saw that coming? Certainly not a mad
Philip
German philosopher.
No, absolutely not.
No, definitely not. So I would award I would award Book of the Week to Bruce Rydell.
Okay.
As you have not been particularly impressed with the things you've been reading.
Yeah, not particularly. And the US Open, we haven't talked about that. Rory McIlroy, 10 over par, terrible, absolutely disastrous. Very difficult course. Tiger, 8 over par. Yeah. So, but gripping. It's good watching golfers play nearly as poorly. Because the thing is, the course is so difficult. If you're good and you try and play it properly, you'll go about 10 over or something. If you're completely rubbish and you top it along the ground, that's the best way of actually doing a similar sort of score. One guy was 22 over par, which is playing, to a handicap of 22 or whatever. My son's handicap is 20. So...
He must be devastated.
If he was playing Shinnecock Hills, he'd probably, all you'd have to do is play really badly, and at least the ball would go predictably along the ground, and you'd get to the green eventually. These guys are getting triple bogeys by trying to play properly. That's the problem. That's their coaches should say, stop trying to play properly.
Right. Well, your son must be devastated with what's happened with
Rory.
McIlroy.
Yeah, we're in a state of shock. But yeah.
Well, on that note, then,
I think that's a suitable note to end. Yeah.
Concern. Well, keep watching. See
Indeed.
if Rory can dig himself out
of
the bunker.
We'll be watching, all right,
I'm
laughing
sure.
at Tiger.
Sure. And keep your eye on Spain and France and see which of the states implodes first at the World Cup.
And the geopolitical repercussions thereof.
Indeed.
Yeah, it's like the Eurovision Song Contest with a ball and lots of countries that aren't in Europe in it. Otherwise, the same.
So as always, you can follow us, you can like us, you can tweet us,
you can subscribe.
Can
you?
You can.
Right, okay, you can subscribe.
Good job, Mark.
Good, because at the end of the things my son watches, which are all about trick shots by, these American guys who are really very talented, but they take 8 million takes to do the things that...
Yeah.
And that's a tribute to people saying, and this shot is the egg juggling shot or something, and they've said that 8 million times, and then if finally the trick works, and the law of probability is going to work eventually. Anyway,
the law of probability
at the end
says
of
that
these,
we will finish this podcast, this video.
And in the end they say subscribe.
So subscribe.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Like, whatever.
So until next time. Thanks for watching.
Indeed.